Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel. We're going to talk today about what are red flags and what aren't red flags as part of this sort of what are and what aren't some of the classical concepts in these narcissistic relationships. And just as a little bit of a surprise, in September, we have 25% off our healing community. And let me tell you, you're going to want to know what are and aren't red flags, and then you're going to want to heal from this mess. So 25% off your first month. Go to the video notes, hit the link, you'll get more information. So let's break down these red flags. So red flags, right? We talk about them all the time. Those magical banners that are meant to signify danger and get us out of harm's way. Most of us think we know what they are, and the big ones are clear. Things like someone flirting with the server on a first date or any date, texting while you are sharing something heartfelt with them, never asking you a single question about yourself and solely talking about themselves, screaming at you or another person, making racially insensitive or other kinds of insensitive comments that are deeply uncomfortable. Those are very clear red flags. There's no doubt you really are like, okay, this is a call to arms. This is not going to work. But at the core of it, red flags are behaviors or words that feel invalidating and unsettling. They are also consistent. It is not one tantrum that happens, and then they catch themselves and say, I didn't sleep last night, my behavior was completely inexcusable, and it never does happen again. The first tantrum may have been a red flag, but rapid corrective action may demote it from that behavior from being a red flag. When we attempt to address a red flag with someone, especially a new person, if it's a red flag, a true red flag, their response will be defensive. A healthy person will take ownership and accountability and just be cool. But in this series, we are unpacking what is and what isn't, with the hope that the what isn't makes things much more clear on what things are. Red flags are tricky because the in-your-face stuff is so clear. Those aren't even red flags. Those in-your-face ones are more like 5-alarm fires. But the subtle stuff gets tricky. Red flags are also an interaction between things that matter to us and which may not be as big an issue for someone who has not had our history. So let's talk about the things that red flags are not. They are not differences in preferences. A person liking pepperoni pizza or liking wine instead of beer or winter instead of summer, that's not a red flag. You may not share their preferences or may even find their preferences so off-putting that you don't want to be in a relationship with them. Sometimes vegans and carnivores don't get along very well, but that isn't a red flag. That's just a difference in preference. So after a first date, you wouldn't want to say, oh, you won't believe this red flag. They love deep dish pizza. That's not a red flag. If, however, they devalue your choice of pizza, they'd say, oh, only a fool or a Philistine would order thin crust pizza, and they aren't joking, then that becomes more of a red flag. Red flags are also not social class or other superficial differences, though, frankly, someone who gets too stuck on those superficial issues, that in and of itself may be a red flag about a person. But so let's say perhaps a person doesn't know how to pronounce the name of a wine or of a dish on the menu, or isn't dressed in the right labels, whatever the right labels are, hell if I know. Or perhaps they didn't achieve a certain level of educational attainment. That's not a red flag. That's just their life. And if that stuff matters to you, then you take accountability for that. It's fine that that's your preference, but don't turn it into a red flag. Red flags are also not behavior that is within normal limits. A person, for example, expressing what we consider a normal amount of exasperation over a lost reservation when you finally get to the restaurant, or traffic, or anxiety about something happening in their life, and they express it in an appropriate way, but may talk about it a lot, that's not a red flag. That may just be behavior. You certainly don't want to date a robot And people do bring stuff to their relationships. Maybe they really wanted to take you to a special restaurant. The reservation not working out for them was frustrating. The tricky part, though, is what is normal limits. For one person, a person checking a text at dinner isn't a big deal because the person's told them rather clearly they have a work issue. For someone else, it may be intolerable, even knowing about the work issue, because of a past history of betrayal. Our histories can turn some flags red. It happens. Then there is a trickier issue of what about historical issues? Fair or not, some people will say, well, I met this person and they've never been married and they're 60 years old. What's wrong with them? Or I met a person and they've been divorced 4 times. What's wrong with them? Or I've met this person but they've been in and out of intensive treatment for a certain issue. Should I be concerned? I know that behind closed doors, people may be suspicious about that never married person or that multi-divorced person or that person who may be living in long-term sobriety but had a tough path to it and had a difficult history as a result. But I gotta tell you, I still don't know that I like calling those red flags, but rather moments of accountability. If a person has been divorced 4 times and you meet them and they are kind and compassionate and respectful and regulated and self-aware, then writing them off solely on the basis of that history, it could be a real missed opportunity. To me, red flags are the events and episodes that happen on your watch, that leave you unsettled, that don't change, and are met with defensiveness when you bring them up. Obviously, some historical issues involving like behavior that violates the rights of others, then we put that under the red flags. Now, the big red banners are easy to see, but the more subtle ones take a minute. And I know for many folks there's a risk of over-labeling red flags. It's what we do if we've been harmed. And especially for people who've had a past history of narcissistic relationships, they're more acutely aware of the red flags. More than anything else, we feel red flags in our guts. Those somatic systems code those memories, and we feel a little sick and uncomfortable, but can't even find the words. Listen to your body too, as it may be better at detecting red flags if you just give it a chance. So I'd love to hear from you. What are other things that are not red flags that I may have missed? I'd be curious, because it's tricky. Ultimately, when it comes to narcissistic relationships, just because I'm saying here something's not a red flag, whether it's the kind of pizza they like or they have had a relationship history that's sort of unsettling for you, you've got to push yourself through to what feels comfortable to you. If that doesn't feel comfortable, honor yourself. Healing from narcissistic abuse is always about honoring yourself and what feels right. And okay, sure, maybe that person could have been a good person for you, but the thing that unsettled you, listen to it, pay attention to it. That is the key to survivorship. It's not for me to sit here and say, well, that's definitely not a red flag. It may not qualify as a red flag, but it may be uncomfortable for you. And then that is something you need to listen to. Thanks again.